discretion is advised.
Okay, my passengers are here. I gotta go.
Hey, and welcome. I'm Dave, and you are listening to Life Is Peachy, a music-driven, nostalgia-fueled, immersive audio documentary podcast. Excellent. With each episode always featuring a special guest from the album of discussion. Life Is Peachy allows me to sit here and waffle on about the bands and the albums that became the soundtrack to my life. Growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s to now, shooting music videos and music documentaries for some of my favorite artists through Life Is Peachy Productions.
Action. You know, I can eat a peach for hours.
Lips, let's jump into the time machine together. It's time to... Step into the sideshow! Lips. Yes, that is you, the Life Is Peachy supporters. Thank you for your time and energy, and welcome to Season 4 of the podcast and its maiden voyage, Episode 32.
Maiden? It's a new look.
New season, newish intro, and the new branding for what was previously known as Her Name Is Murder Productions. After 15 years under that monarch, I have decided to retire the name and rebrand all my future endeavors under Life Is Peachy Productions.
Sometimes to love someone, you gotta be a stranger.
What does this mean? Well, if anyone is interested, all of my film work, so essentially anything I would have ever done under HNIMP will now fall under this new umbrella, along with the podcast itself. Everything in one place under one production house roof.
It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum.
Their early work was a little too new wave for my taste. But when sports came out in '83, I think they really came into their own, commercially and artistically.
I feel really good about this, and after 15 years in the industry, it's given me the much needed electric shock of zest and vigor to continue on with excitement, a focus, and clarity. I can't believe we're now a little over halfway through 2024, yet here we are, and with that shinfo in mind, I'd like to quickly take you back to the middle of April, where I was working back-to-back shows at the iconic Enmore Theatre in Sydney, filming with Fear Factory in support of the mighty Machine Head.
You trust me?
Of course I trust you.
Close your eyes.
The moment I first heard Fear Factory in the late 90s, I mean, that was me. Done. It was a game changer. Metallica, Pantera, and Sepultura introduced me to a beautiful thing called heavy music. And enter Rage Against the Machine and the 90s nu metal boom. I was obsessed with discovering more music and going down the rabbit hole. Predominantly anything related to producer Ross Robinson and record label Roadrunner Records. And Fear Factory were linked to both of these crucial ingredients, with a sound that instantly digitized the listener into a fan, and it was their third album, released via Roadrunner Records, which marked my official introduction to the band in 1998. But we will come back to that all in good time.
Stick around.
Over 25 years later, they have left their mark on the Life Is Peachy Productions bucket list, and I never stop pinching myself with the bands I am lucky enough to work with. Those same bands that lined my bedroom walls on posters and blasted through my stereo or Discman while headbanging and playing air guitar.
No stairway. Denied.
From watching the epic Resurrection music video cross-legged on the floor at 2 a.m. via Rage in 1998, to using the same exact song to soundtrack the Australian tour promo video I made for Fear Factory in 2024. It's surreal. But this is what I strive for, to work with artists that I have a connection with or am inspired by, because this goes into the work and the job at hand. Professionally passionate, I label myself. I couldn't imagine creating something any other way. And upon meeting Fear Factory's new singer, it got me thinking about this concept. Idolizing bands, looking up to them, to then working with them on a professional, monetary level. From Sepultura to Fear Factory and the many in between, I have been extremely fortunate to continue achieving this, and right in front of me, while working with Fear Factory, was another great example of someone doing the exact same thing. What has this crazy journey been like for Milo, from fan to frontman and carrying the Fear Factory torch into this new exciting era? What comes from carrying the weight of that torch? And what did it all feel like leading up to that moment? Well, it's time to find out. Milo Silvestro, thank you for your time and energy, and welcome to the Life Is Peachy Podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is going to be so awesome. Thanks, Milo. Okay, so to get things started, a nice and easy one. The $1 million question, favorite Fear Factory album and why?
The answer to that question is 3. Because I tried to squeeze 3 albums in a number 1 spot.
Right.
But I mean, if I really had to pick up one, I would say Obsolete.
Good man.
Because of all the production, the sound and the theme, the arrangement, the riffs, and the melodies, bird screaming tone. If I had to pick up my favorite screaming tone from one album, I would say Obsolete, because I don't know, it was something to it. You know, it was some gruff, some fucking to it that was really unique in that album. And even live, and if you see live from 98, 99, it was ferocious as fuck. It was the fierce animal. You know, it was even more ferocious live than the record. So yeah, I mean, probably my favorite era of the band, my favorite album, but I would say Digimoro comes right after. Even though I know a lot of fans think it's more like watered down or like commercial version of Fear Factory, I still like it because it's polished, you know, it's really precise, but it's meant to be like that because it's Digimoro. It makes sense. It's like really digital sounding. To me, made perfect sense. It's a great album, and it has great melodies and a great synth work. The synth arrangement are crazy on that album. And then after the Digimoro, I would say Genexus.
Okay.
That's actually my favorite album of the first new era of Fear Factory, which is from Mechanized on.
Nobody knows anyone else, ever. You will never, ever know me.
I love all of those albums, don't get me wrong. I love Mechanized, I love The Industrialist, and I love Aggression Continuum, but Genexus has that throwback synth work, little bit of Digimortal synth work, you know, and I think some of the Obsolete groovy vibe and the melodies and the hooks are great in the album. It was really well done, you know?
So there we have it, a top 3. I actually love that because I'm totally guilty of trading in a top 3 for a number 1 spot because it's often quite impossible to pick a favorite.
Yeah.
Especially when a back catalogue boasts so many amazing releases. And yeah, I've always thought Digimortal was a severely underrated album. I really did enjoy it back when it was released in 2001, despite also agreeing with the watered down sentiment. I was just riding high on the Obsolete wave, so at this stage, Fear Factory could really do no wrong.
Caught my first tube this morning. So.
But I must say, Digimortal has found itself on rotation again after a decade or so hiatus, and yeah, I love it even more now. And
Absolutely.
the way you just described the aesthetic and sound, the term Digimortal, yeah, in layman's terms, this is damn spot on. Everything about this album is precise, on the nose, and I dare say simplified. In retrospect, Digimortal is an AI album, well and truly before this concept was a known thing to man. You've kind of blown my mind away with that analogy. It's such a smart way of writing when you think about the scope and themes of Fear Factory. I think if this was actually the case, then it just went over everyone's head back at the turn of the century.
To be or not to be.
Lost hope, lost faith, we've lost our way, lost time.
I read somewhere in some review of the album, somewhere on the internet, some webzine, and he used words to describe the album that I really liked. Digimortal is like the monster hiding inside your computer, lurking inside your computer. It kind of made sense, you know? It made me think of songs like Byte Block, which has a middle section where you hear all synthesizers, and then he builds back in, I was lost, you know, all that part, that voice becomes robotic. Yeah, exactly. And that part kind of makes me think of that demon or evil presence in your computer, you know?
Yeah.
We need to know how Skynet gets built. Who's responsible?
I think they pioneered the concept of how technology is almost digitalize us in a way, you know, and making us less human in a way.
One step closer to my fate.
And nowadays, almost all bands in modern metal scene are going for that sound. They don't even know where it comes from. Not just the clean vocals, screaming vocals thing, or the machine gun riffing, the we would call it obligato, which is like the unison of rhythmic pattern between guitar and double bass. But not also that, but like the production, the tight, almost like digital production, it's everywhere. But I think it makes sense mostly in Fear Factory because it suits with the team, you know, with the Man vs. Machine theme. I think that's how influential they were. They got, I don't say ripped off, but, you know, inspired bands, and then bands inspired other bands. It was passed through generations, but nowadays, some of those bands that sound like Fear Factory, they don't even know Fear Factory.
Right.
So I think now it's time to make the band shine again and be like, okay, this is where it comes from, you know? This is where all that sound and all that style come from.
Yes, I love that.
No, you can't tie me apart. We will never see the end. We will never be the end. All my life, I felt this garden.
Okay, so speaking within the realm of where things are birthed from, it's now common knowledge that you come from quite a musical household and background. So to delve a little into some of the influences and inspirations before yourself becoming a Digimortal. Do you have a definitive memory when you really noticed vocals in music or in a song?
I mean, it was pretty difficult not to notice voices because both my parents are singers and musicians. So it was there, you know, so since day one, you know, probably even before I was born, I was hearing from my mom's belly, you know, music and stuff. That was pretty inevitable, I think.
Yeah, I guess it was.
But yeah, I would say my parents are the first voices that I ever heard. But the actual passion and obsession, I would say, for music came just later on when I was a teenager, like 11, 12. I wasn't really into music at all up until that age. You know, when I was 11, something sparkled. The first instrument I fell in love with was double bass, you know, it's tenor double bass. But of course, they couldn't buy 11 years old double bass. Yeah, they were like, okay, here's electric bass. So electric bass was technically my first instrument that I studied, but it didn't progress from there. You know, it was just a thing when I was 11. And also, my dad has his home studio back then. He had like a software called Fruity Loop, which now evolved into FL Studio, which is so popular. And I'm still using it, but I started using it back then when I was 11. Of course, I was just messing around with no knowledge at all. But that was my first sparkle of passion for electronic music. And then the year later, when I was 12, I just discovered this passion for banging stuff like percussion. And so I became a drummer and percussionist ever since.
Wow, you're amazing, dude.
Thanks. I like to play.
That's still my primarily instrument. And
wow.
Metal and singing came a little bit later. I started singing in an actual band when I was 21, but before singing in a band, I was experimenting some shit in my room, you know, when I was 19, I think, producing my first instrumentals with shitty MIDI guitars, you know, and just try to experiment. I was feeling like the urge to write lyrics and invent some shit, so that's how singing was born for me.
Right, kind of out of necessity.
At first, it was more like a need, like I needed like a therapy.
Yeah, it's really interesting. My next question was to ask if there was a moment when you caught yourself singing or when that interest was sparked, but it seems like it was actually born in necessity of a somewhat self-therapy, I guess you could say.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because as opposite to playing drums or percussion or like doing electronic music, which was more like a straight passion, I loved to do that, and I was playing, you know, every day in my house. I don't even know how my mom put up with all the noise that I made every day in that house.
What? Dad, this is the best part! No! Dad, this is the best part! Come on! No, I want to listen to it, okay?
That was a straight passion. Like, you know, I love to do it and I want to do it. It's going to be my job. But singing came just mostly as a therapy. I didn't necessarily love it at first. It was more like I need to do it. I feel awkward because I'm not a frontman. And the first time I remember my first show as a vocalist was awkward as fuck. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? You know? Yeah. Because I always had that sideman or backward musician mentality. I'm in the back, I'm playing drums or percussions, whatever. And that was really weird and kind of uncomfortable at first. But then, of course, it grew on me. And yeah, you know, it was pretty much a need to vent some of my teenager dramas, which, you know, each one of us had some teenage dramas back then.
Sure.
Yeah, and I was a particularly, I would say, hypersensitive guy.
Do you think I'm weird? Definitely. No, man, seriously. Am I weird? Yeah, but so what? Everybody's weird.
And some things in life at that time, hit me particularly hard. So I was like, I need something to cope with this. And metal came by, around the same time I was just getting into Slipknot, Korn, and of course Metallica way back. And, the rest is history. When I started writing lyrics and learning how to scream, I discovered this huge power of metal singing, a way to, I would say, almost purify your soul, Yeah, it's really powerful.
I'm getting some goosebumps right about now, resonating with what you're saying and your connection with heavy music, purifying the soul.
Sick is taken from Slipknot's debut self-titled album, which turned 25 in 2024, a life-changing album for many, including myself. Head over to the second channel, the Lip Mixtape Sessions, and listen to track 7, where I reflect on the 1998 release with ex-sampler Craig Jones. You'll find the link in the description of this episode.
I think it's sick.
That profound impact of music and its voice is just something so personal, yet here we all are intrinsically bonded and connected to each other in some shape or form thanks to it.
Right.
And in particular, heavy emotional music definitely did this for me, as any Lip listener will well and truly know by now.
No, it was crazy.
And back then, for myself, pretty much around the same age you're just now looking back on, when I started my band, I was heavily influenced by the local bands I looked up to. Bands like Sunk Lodo, with members around my age, signing to major labels. It was things like this giving me the hope and dream that I too could make a life and career out of being in a band.
To hear more about these memories and reflections, check out episode 12 of the Life Is Peachy Podcast with ex-Sunk Lodo guitarist Luke McDonald.
But it also was a little different for you because you were already growing up in a house of music and music-based careers thanks to your parents. So you were surrounded by it since birth, or even as you said it, since you were in the belly. Which I love, that's so nice. Was that environment the catalyst that automatically made you think, okay, this is what I want to do for my life and my career, and even furthermore to that, that it's something that is actually possible?
Kill me, 'cause I'm already inside you. You can't kill me, 'cause I'm already inside you. You can't kill me, 'cause I'm already inside you.
I think so. I mean, it was pretty inevitable, because both my parents are professionals. They all have always been working with music and in the music scene in Italy. It wasn't like just a hobby. We were constantly soaked in music, so we always had electric pianos and guitars and, microphones and PAs laying around the house. It was pretty much there. So yeah, to answer your question, I think that was pretty much the catalyst. I had that inside of me naturally one day, and I don't know how, but it just randomly, sparkled out, and the rest is history. I think that was around the time my dad had his own studio, I believe. He was doing some productions for a big Italian song festival in Italy called Sanremo, which is really popular in Italy. So he was producing a bunch of artists. It was always working, on writing new music and stuff like that. So I was in his studio, and for some reason I got intrigued by computer songwriting and stuff like that, and later on playing instruments. So yeah, I think that was definitely the catalyst,
Outside of those influences from your parents, was there much of a scene in Rome in terms of nu metal infused bands? Because you were talking earlier, mentioning the likes of Korn, Slipknot.
Right.
Were there any local bands around you also coming from those similar influences?
I must say it wasn't so easy to find, even when I grew older, like 16 or 18, wanted to start a band. And I had bands here and there, but it was difficult to find people that wanted to play, especially that kind of metal. Of course, Metallica, Iron Maiden, and all that stuff. And I played some of that when I fell in love for all the new wave of metal bands, all the 90s new metal bands like Slipknot, Cold Chamber, Korn. It was more difficult to find young guys that age or even like older that were interested in playing that genre at all. I mean, it was popular back then in the early 2000s, but probably not as much as it was in the US, I'm assuming. At least in, young, probably the older guys, when I was a teenager, guys 30 years old at time, my age, more or less, they were probably more into 90s metal, Pantera, Fear Factory, Korn, etc.
It's okay, Mom. He's here to help. It's okay.
I'm noticing this. I may be wrong, but from my experience in Italy, we have less metal parenting. So we have less kids raised up on metal. Judging from all the tours that we did with Fear Factory, I mean, we saw a lot of young kids with their parents, on their parents' shoulders. They bring their kids in the merch stable, signing and taking pictures. And it's really cool. Some of them are like 9 or 10.
Yeah,
I'm like, wow.
So cool.
When I was your age, I didn't even know what Fear Factory was.
Right. Yeah, when I was running around the Enmore Theatre filming you in Sydney, I got to see that firsthand, and I absolutely love that. I see the same thing every single Sepultura show I work too.
Right.
Music coming down through the generations, it just adds to that feeling you can already have with certain bands and music, that it's timeless.
Absolutely.
Local bands aside, did you have mates who were also into similar music?
Back then, I had this one friend that introduced me. I think I was probably 15. So it was 2002, I want to say. And back then, all that new metal wave was so popular. And this guy was doing like DJ sets with new metal. So he was doing like rock/metal, new metal parties in a club in Rome, playing all that stuff. Back then for us in Italy was kind of new, because in Europe, I think especially in Italy, all the American trends come a little bit later. That scene was probably becoming saturated by that time in America.
And I would say in Australia too, at the very least, it was well and truly heading that way for sure.
But in Italy was kind of new in the early 2000s, so it was like, what the fuck is this, And so I was playing all this music from rap metal, new metal, and classic metal too. I was playing Metallica, I was playing Pantera, I was playing Static X, Korn, Slipknot, Linkin Park, and it was such a variety of all these bands. So I think that was the very first time that I had a friend that not only introduced me to all that genres and subgenres of metal, but a friend that I could share the love for this music with, And then of course, later on, my teenage era, I had a band where we play like some new metal covers and some Korn, Slipknot, Cold Chamber. So, of course, at the time, those guys were my close friend, was my band. So we would hang out a lot, but it wasn't super common, I would say. I don't know if it's because of the area that I live in, because I live in such a peripheric area of Rome, but I think that's also because we don't really have as much of a big metal scene as much as like Australia or the US or some parts of Europe.
Thanks to everyone who made it possible. Thanks for having us along. If you want to say how much we suck or how much you like us, go to our website, www.fake.y.com.au. Thanks for coming out, thanks for having us. Enjoy the rest of the bands.
It's gonna suck.
In the late 90s, I started a band with musically like-minded and influenced friends, and at first we only performed covers, also from some of our favorite bands like Cold Chamber, Korn, Limp Bizkit, Rage Against the Machine. It was some of my favorite times during those adolescent years, and come to the turn of the century, it was impossible to kind of avoid nu metal, crossing over into the mainstream, charting and selling. But going back just a couple of years earlier, I felt like I was more on a solo mission, putting in the time and effort and research and detective work, and I remember my first encounter with Fear Factory so vividly. I started high school in 1998, and every second Friday I would get a ride to school thanks to a mum's mate who lived around the corner from me. This trip saved me taking the bus once in a while, but more than that, this mate had an older brother who, and I think you might know the one, long hair, metal dude in his late teens, maybe early 20s. It's sometimes hard to tell that age. Everyone just seems way older and cooler. But yeah, one day I arrived at my mate's place, and across their long driveway and through the front yard, I could hear music blaring from the house. But I couldn't recognize who it was. Definitely something I hadn't heard before, and at this age, I was thirsty for music. Little did I know this mammoth song was Shock. The first track from, of course, Obsolete. The dual-style vocal interplay delivered like I had never heard done before, and massive production. My mouth was on the floor, and by the time I entered the house, Edge Crusher was well and truly melting my damn face. I remembered the fat riffs, the double bass on the verses, and the DJ scratching on the bridge. Such huge riffs, but massive tones aside, and believe me, it was hard to focus because they were distracting, but before me was an amazing box of CDs.
We happy?
Yeah, we happy.
It was like opening the suitcase in Pulp Fiction. I checked the spine of the album resting atop the pile. Road Runner Records. Of course. I physically own Only Suffocation's Roadrunner releases simply because I saw them in this same box. This box became a treasure chest of bands that I set out to discover from this day forward. Thank you, older brother dude. I salute you, and of course, the Mecca, back in the day, Roadrunner Records. And now thank you, Milo, for enduring my How I Met Fear Factory love story. Do you remember the first time you heard Fear Factory and what it was that drew you to their music?
I do, actually. I discovered Fear Factory later on, unfortunately. Unfortunately. I don't know if that's a fortune. I think it was 2007, I want to say. Yeah, I wish I would have discovered them way earlier, but, you know, it is what it is. A drummer that played in my band at the time just got me to Fear Factory. I'm like, dude, you gotta check out Fear Factory. Well, it's a very influential band, blah, blah. So I started to Google them on Wikipedia and blah, blah. And I clearly remember that night we're in my room and he showed me on YouTube, because it was a thing back then already. So he played me, I think it was Resurrection. So these for the first song that I heard. And, at first I was like, okay, this is interesting. It's different. I like it. It took a while to grow on me. But it wasn't until later then another member of another band that I had passed me the discography, the downloaded discography, unfortunately. But that's how we rolled back then, We're a generation of LimeWire and email. I'm not proud of it, but, at least we bought albums later on. We would check a lot of music because I think back then you couldn't find a lot on YouTube. When an artist put out a new album, you couldn't check it out on YouTube, so you had to download it.
In the computer, it's so simple.
I remember I checked the whole discography, which at time, I think Mechanized wasn't out yet. So it was from Soul of the Machine to Transgression.
The last album to feature Burton and both Raymond and Christian from the classic era lineup.
Yeah. The first album that I checked was Digimortal because, of course, I was coming from that groovy new metal sound. So hearing Lynchpin made me feel like, okay, this is my stuff. This is my jam. Nice. This is groovy. I like it. And he had that fresh element of the machine gun riffs that were really like diverse, unique. And then from there, I progressed and checked out the other album. So I would say Digimortal was the first album I fell in love with. And then after that, Obsolete. For some weird reason, Demanufacture was the album that took a little bit longer to grow on me. Demanufacture and Soul of the Machine. When they did, of course I was obsessed. I had an obsession era for each album.
That's awesome. The sign of an amazing back catalog.
It was the era when I was obsessed with Digimortal, era when I was obsessed for Demanufacture. So when Mechanized came out, even though it was kind of different and faster and heavier than the majority of the music I was used to listen, I was really hooked. I was really fascinated by it because I was like, this is fast as fuck, it's heavy as fuck, but it still feels groovy. Even if it's fast, the way Dino wrote all the riffs and the rhythmic pattern, even if it's fast shaped, but it still made it sound groovy for some reason. And I'm like, I like it. It's different. No other bands do that. I never heard anyone, playing so heavy, so fast, but yet so groovy. So I was hooked. That was the moment where I was like, okay, I have to go check them out live.
Due to the graphic nature of this program, listener discretion is advised.
The Mechanized Tour 2010, they went to North Italy. I was hooked ever since. When I saw them live, I was really impressed. It was really a cathartic experience almost.
Life-changing.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I loved everything about them. I loved their stage presence. Even though it wasn't, I would say, probably wasn't their best shape as far as stage presence or highness, but I would still love it because there was such an aura, Especially Bert, he had that aura. For some reason, the way he posed on stage, his moves, I don't know, I was hooked. I went back to see them live 2 years later during the Industrialist tour, and they went to Rome, to my city, which is really rare that a band that big comes down to Rome because it's not really like a huge scene, as I said before.
I'm not going to kill you. Your job will be to tell the rest of them that death is coming for them tonight.
Later on, it became full circle because, first of all, the opening band that night was Havoc, which is Pete's band. Pete's our drummer. So that was the first time that I saw Pete ever.
Yeah, wow.
And it's really like a full circle because you would never expect. And second, I got to meet Dino and Bert after the show. I was really, I was 24. I was fanboying so hard. I even gave Dino a demo of my band, that channel. There was a cover of Edge Crusher, I think. But, I was just like, Dino, can you please take my demo? You're my guitar god. He's like, okay.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and you can find both pictures with me, Dino, and me and Bert. You can find them online somewhere, probably in the New Breed Facebook page. And fast forward to 10-ish years later, here we are. And life is fucking crazy sometimes.
Oh, man. Yeah, absolutely surreal. It's such a trip out. You were talking about the groove of Fear Factory pulling you in. And I would have to agree with that too. That mix between machine gun precision and groove was just a match made in heaven and was really brought to life to the next level with Obsolete. And I've always wanted and needed groove in my music, from the very first taste of this with Pantera, Sepultura, Rage Against the Machine, even Load with Metallica, which I absolutely love. So everyone, sorry, my favorite Metallica album is Load, but please don't hold that against me and just keep on listening. It'll be okay.
I thought my jokes were bad.
Beyond the groove, in your opinion, before even joining the band, what made Fear Factory unique to you? Because of course there is the most obvious, that being Burton's unique vocal style and interplay between harsh and cleans, which back in the early 90s, he of course was the GOAT, and Soul of a New Machine in 1992 was a game-changing, genre-bending release because of that.
Scapegoat from 1992's Soul of a New Machine.
I'd love to ask you what your first impressions of this were, because obviously by the mid-2000s, every band doing this was a dime a dozen, and even though you could have found yourself impressed by Burton and be a fan of his vocals, maybe the impact wasn't as profound, because everyone is now singing and screaming, but were you still able to find his voice unique?
Well, of course. It did sound unique. Bert had, even when he talks, he had that, and he still has that baritone-ish sound to it. Not just referring to his range, baritone range, but his vocal timbre, his vocal tone, He has that kind of sound, and it's really particular. And I can't think of another metal vocalist that has that same exact sound. I mean, similar, sure, singers with a thick kind of voice, but he was really unique in that. And I think he really brought that cyberpunk vibe, in his clean vocals, and he brought it into metal. And back then, I can't think of a vocalist, especially back then, that had that sound rather than Peter Steele from the...
Yeah, Typo Negative.
Right, Typo Negative. That's probably one of the only guys that I can think of back then. That was like a dark wave, cyberpunk / goth tone, sound, style, whatever. But Bert, of course, was so unique in that. And of course, he alternated that with his ferocious screams and even like death metal growls in the first album. It was the first one, for sure. But of course, as you said, when I discovered them, I had listened to a lot of bands that were doing that already. So at first, that feature didn't stick out because it wasn't new anymore in 2007. But when I did my homeworks and I kind of remember the first time that I went to Wikipedia and checked them out, because when I started getting interested with bands, I always check stuff on the internet, and
yeah, it seems my brain only stores Wikipedia information these days.
I've never been there, but I read about it in a book.
One of the things that I clearly remember from their Wikipedia is that, they're a futuristic themed band. They talk about the relationship between man and machine, blah, blah, blah. And they were one of the first band, if not the first band, to number one, to do the alternation of clean vocals, scream vocals, and number two, using that staccato machine gun riffs, not counting one from Metallica, of course. Probably one of the songs that Dino took inspiration from. I mean, he said that. He took that and made a genre out of it. I would say they were the first one to make a whole sound out of that machine gun thing with the alternation of the two vocal styles.
Yeah, it's huge.
Absolutely. And so when I discovered that, I started seeing Fear Factory from another perspective, like, oh, okay, so this band is really not like an average metal band. It's like these guys are pioneers. And then, of course, when I went deeper into their catalog, I was even more hooked. These guys don't fuck around. They have chops. They have fucking unique sound. Not just as far as the guitar riffing or the drumming or vocals go, but also like all the electronic texture and arrangement, Those electronics are crazy, man.
Yeah, dude.
Smart kid. He read my mind.
With your English, he doesn't have much choice.
Hey, I know all the good words.
You ask me if I have a God complex? Let me tell you something. I am God.
I am the way. Remember salvation. I am the way. Remember salvation.
Listening to this, you are the resistance.
Riz Wolbers, which is the guy that arranged the majority of synthesizer and electronic on their records, which is kind of like a fifth Fear Factory member. And I think he did an amazing job.
Definitely. Do you know if Riz will contribute in a studio capacity for future music?
I'm assuming he will work with the band again. He's totally down. And we met Riz in our show in Vancouver. It was actually my first time meeting him in person. It was really cool. Riz is a totally nice guy. He's a legend. So it was really cool to meet him. Also, we went to see him with Frontman Assembly. They played here in LA in the Fauna Theater. They opened for Gary Newman. Both amazing set. It was such an amazing night.
Well, on that note, now is as good a time as ever to take a Gary Newman detour, but more so, let's follow that road to what was becoming a thing at that point in time. Coming into the year 2000, the nu metal cover song. I think this little bit of trivia is so very cool. In 1996, word spread that Fear Factory was performing Cars during their European run. Obviously, song originally performed by Gary Newman from his 1979 debut solo album, The Pleasure Principle. And as a result of this, Gary Newman's manager made contact and flew Newman out to Vancouver for 3 days in the studio with Fear Factory.
Yeah.
Along with the cover, a Gary Newman spoken word iconically opens the album's title track, and it is epic. And it could be said that this out of character, bouncy and bright rendition somewhat contrasted with the Fear Factory trademark sound, but original drummer Raymonf Herrera described this cover as
basically like a blueprint of a futuristic car.
And I don't know, this description for some reason absolutely makes so much sense and makes me appreciate the cover even more.
It's really well done.
Say, that's a nice bike.
This was the final single from Obsolete. It charted at 89 on the Australian ARIA chart and 16 on the US mainstream rock chart. Selling over 250,000 copies, Cars definitely played a significant part in Obsolete's ranking as Fear Factory's highest selling album and breaking the band into the mainstream, certified gold in both Australia and the US. This, naturally, for better or for worse, contributed to creating the famous or infamous nu metal cover, with most bands taking a slice of the nu metal cover pie in hope for success, similar to Cars or Orgy's Blue Monday.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just tell your mother that we ate it all.
Presenting vibrant renditions of somewhat uncharacteristic song choices.
The following is a segment from episode 8 of the Life Is Peachy Podcast, The Burning Red with Rob Flynn.
And then at one point, Ross just really started whipping everybody up, Dave and Adam and Aru, to like, yeah, we got to put this on the record. Look, Orgy's having a big hit with Blue Monday. I was totally not into it. I was so not into it. And I kind of fought tooth and nail. In the end, got outvoted, and I was like, all right, maybe this works. We'll try it. Ross very influential like that. But it just kind of messed up the flow of the record to me.
Would you like some cover song with your new metal?
searching for the ghost of Tom Jones.
You spin me right round, baby, right round, like a record, baby, right round, round, round. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, and I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Oh Lord, oh Lord. Shout, shout, let it all out. These are the things I can do without. Come on, I'm talking to you, so come on. Shout, say love, say love, say love.
Also, the cover of Dog Day Sunrise from Demanufacture is another example of a bright reinterpretation for the band that still seems to make sense within the Fear Factory soundscape and is definitely a great rendition. In the description for this episode, there's a link to a YouTube music video playlist that I've made for these cover songs. So if you're bored on a Friday night, definitely check that out. It's a good time.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Since in the band, I gave a hand with backing tracks to organize the sessions and Logic and stuff like that. And I was hearing the stems that we have because, of course, we don't have a keyboard player now, so we're having backing tracks for all the synthesizer and stuff like that. And I was hearing all those stems isolated, especially from the album Obsolete. And when you hear just the synth line, it's like, what the fuck these guys come up with? It's crazy, you know. Those analog synthesizer sounds were just nuts.
Yeah, man. Whereas some bands will use keys as a sort of icing on the cake, you're totally right in the fifth member aspect of Reese, because what he adds, that element of Fear Factory, is essential to the overall recipe. You can't imagine things without that part of the soundscape.
Yeah.
It adds so much character to the songs and the themes of the albums. And probably why Obsolete feels so cinematic.
Right.
Aside from the obvious concept and running narrative throughout the themes and lyrics, but that soundscape is immense and naturally creates this massive cinematic scope.
3 billion human lives ended on August 29th, 1997. The survivors of the nuclear fire called the war Judgment Day. They lived only to face a new nightmare, the war against the machines.
Obsolete was the band's first fully fledged concept album revolving around a story penned by a previous vocalist, Burton C. titled Conception 5 and set in the year 2076, where machines have taken over mankind. The story was inspired by books like The Boys from Brazil, Brave New World, 1984, and 2001, A Space Odyssey, and the band's belief that humanity had become too reliant on technology.
Wow.
Not relevant by today's standards at all.
Yeah.
Bell explained.
We're up to the point in the story where man is obsolete. Man has created these machines to make his life easier, but in the long run it made him obsolete. The machines he created are now destroying him. Man is not the primary citizen on Earth. The challenge was to make a story out of it. It was kind of difficult to join all of these elements together. But to us, challenge is the greatest thing. Challenge makes us strive for greater ideas and concepts.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. Speaking vocally, do you have a definitive favorite song from Obsolete?
My favorite song to sing live, not just from Obsolete, but in general, is Resurrection because of the emotional meaning that it has to me. I mean, it's hard to pick up like a very favorite one besides Resurrection, of course, but there are highlights, in my opinion, in that record vocally. I love the chorus from Securitron. It's one of my favorite choruses ever. So yeah, there are a lot of epic moments. Of course, Timelessness, that's
definitely
as epic as it gets. It's just unbelievably epic.
I once read that Reese Fulbar originally intended Sarah McLachlan to provide additional vocals to Timelessness, and that could have been great. Yeah. Oh, I was lucky enough to witness Fear Factory close one tour with Timelessness. Absolute goosebumps, man. It was the encore, and just Burton himself, alone on stage with a spotlight beaming down on him, and then that was it. Curtains closed. It was massive.
Yeah, I think it was during the Transgression tour, isn't it?
Correct, yes, exactly. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting that. It was a very special and powerful moment.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Actually, here's something I'd love to hear your opinion on. Earlier, you mentioned rating Burton's vocal performance on Obsolete as your favorite, and yeah, I would have to agree. So it's slightly confusing to me the drastic shift when comparing and contrasting it to Digimortal. Of course, you're not Burton, so this can be a somewhat redundant question, but I'm curious because maybe you can give some insight into it as a vocalist yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan of what he does on Digimortal, so don't get me wrong. I think the hooks and melodies on that album are some of his best, but there's definitely a difference in delivery and intensity, I would say. And after going down the Digimortal rabbit hole before, perhaps it was a conscious artistic choice to present the voice more perfect, clear, digitized, so to speak. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, as they both rate as your favorite albums.
I feel like you spotted a right thing. I mean, yeah, I think it happens with almost all vocalists. Every album, say Slipknot, Corey screams are different every album, and plain vocals too. And I think it's both a matter of changing your approach, but also maturing, I think. When you tour, your voice slightly changes, most of the times for the better. So it becomes more grounded, more consolidated. So yeah, I agree with that. But I'm assuming it's a matter of slide style changing, because I feel like in Digimortal, Bird Scream had slight less distortion to it. They were more like tonal. So you would hear more the note.
Yes, that's it. Thank you. It's more tonal.
Yeah, it's really tonal. He's always been a tonal screamer since the manufacturer.
Yeah.
But I feel like Digimortal, he kind of reduced the distortion a little bit. I try to nail every screaming tone for every album when we play those songs live. So when we sing like Well We Become, I try to nail that sound. Of course, sometimes you're all full of adrenaline and stuff and you add some more distortion because you feel more like, but in general, I go for trying to, emulate that sound. And Digimortal, I feel like it's almost like a shout. Yes. It would be more like, what will become? What will be? When? There's a slight distortion to it, but you can hear the note. In Obsolete, you can still hear the note, but there's a lot, way more distortion to it. I always compare that scream from a ferocity standpoint to Corey screams from Iowa, you know? That's that kind of brutality. So yeah, I would say you're totally right. There is way more distortion. It's already there and demanufactured, but I feel like on Obsolete, it got even more. And even the way he would shape vowels, you know, and doing all this word stretching would create his style. And clean vocals were different too, because in Obsolete, they had some roughness to it, which was beautiful. I loved it. And on Digimortal, it was more like polished. It was more, I don't want to say pop, but
I know what you mean.
Yeah, more polished approach to clean vocals, also more controlled. So I think that was probably, I'm assuming because I don't know, but that was probably like, trying to make up your mind and find, your next thing, your next direction. And I think every album you hear, different vocal tone because of that matter.
Happy birthday to Archetype, which turned 20 this year, in 2024. The first post-Dino album, which was followed by 2005's Transgression, before Dino would return to the band and its new lineup in 2009.
Soul from the Machine, you had like completely different style. It was like Napalm Death meets clean vocals. And same thing with demanufactured clean vocals. To me, I always say demanufactured clean vocals are like 80s new wave cyberpunk kind of thing,
I'm constantly trying to change shit. I'm constantly trying new shit. Time out. It doesn't always work. It didn't fucking work on that. I changed my scream up on Volume 3. It was a much more guttural scream on Iowa. I really wish I could go back and do it the lower way.
The Iowa Obsolete metaphor is quite interesting because then you could probably say something like Volume 3, Digimortal, with
Absolutely.
vocals changing so drastically.
Right, that's true. Actually, I don't know if it's just a coincidence, but the early and mid 2000s were, as far as production goes, there was a time where everything was more polished, I would say, more clean and less rough. Very early 2000, like 2000, 2001, there's still a little bit of roughness, but whatever, Digimortal is still from 2001, and it was probably one of the most polished albums at that time of that genre, which was
Definitely
good and made sense. Yeah, I feel like productions was changing, the way people was listening to music was changing. Some singers were trying new things, like Corey tried completely different kind of scream on subliminal verses, and then went back on the lower, more guttural growl on All Up's Gone. It was definitely a time for change. Someone liked it, someone didn't like it, but yeah. I feel like people need some more of that beef, some more of that roughness.
Dude, yes.
It's slowly happening, but I feel like it's happening. We still have that hyper quantized drumming going on, all that ultra produced sound, but I feel like we're slowly getting a little bit back to some roughness.
Yeah, it's necessary.
Yeah.
So, coming back to Obsolete, what are your favorites from the album in terms of just an actual overall song?
I would still say Resurrection, but yeah, I mean, I'm kind of biased, but
Yeah, fair enough. It's such an epic song.
yeah, Resurrection and Timelessness are probably amongst my favorite from that album. But yeah, Security is a great song. Even Shock, even if Shock is overplayed and all over the place, we played every show, but it's still one of my favorite songs. You know, the chorus is huge. The melody line is not what the majority of singers would come up with, you know? The semitone thing, the chromatic semitone thing. I will be the power surge. It's almost like progressive. And also those direct, da, da. It's really not a thing that the average vocalist would come up with. So it's really original and unique.
Oh, how it pains me to do this. Wait, I still function. Wanna bet?
After 30 plus years fronting the band, original Fear Factory singer Burton C left in 2020, and following a somewhat exhaustive audition process that included 300 different vocalists, you, my friend, got the gig after Dino spotted videos of you performing Fear Factory covers online. Even though some time has now passed, do you still play that moment over within yourself? Getting the official confirmation and the official invitation from Dino to join Fear Factory.
Absolutely. It was crazy. It was crazy. It was real. Being a diehard Fear Factory fan, you know. Getting a Facebook message from Dino, it's really that mind-blowing. Considering it was in 2020, it was right before the pandemic, it was really a sparkle of really good news, incredibly good news. I would say that was probably one of the few things, if not the only thing, that kept me, you know, staying positive during that moment, because, you know, all the COVID, it was a tough moment, not just for the COVID and the lockdown, but, you know, a bunch of shit happens. So yeah, it was a real dark moment, and that thing was real like a sparkle of hope. I gotta stay alive, because I wasn't hired right away, but the fact that Dino contacted me and was like, you know, as soon as the lockdown is over, I want you to fly here for the audition. I was like, well, it's a really good end of the tunnel, you know? Light at the end of the tunnel.
I can't help but think what a strange time it must have been for you, receiving that news, but then just having to wait indefinitely, you know, for a pandemic to blow over.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I didn't believe it. And I was like, can't happen. It just can't happen. It's one of those things that is like, what if I tell you that you won $1 million? Tomorrow you're gonna win $1 million. Like, fuck off. You know? Right. To me, that's my $1 million, you know?
So cool.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't believe it, and I still don't believe it, to be honest with you. I'm still like thinking that I would wake up, you know, someday in my bed in Rome, and I'm like, okay, it's been a nice dream, you know, now let's get back to your shitty life.
Oh man, I was about to joke. Imagine if this was all some strange, messed up dream. But no, this is happening. It's real.
Yeah, it's a constant pinching moment.
Affirmative.
Yeah, it's that crazy. So yeah, I totally recall how it feels, and It's been a long process because of the COVID. You know, the first tour was supposed to happen on February 2022, but then it got postponed 1 year because of COVID, which was better for me because I had 1 more year to get ready, you know, physically and vocally. But at the same time, I was like, are we doing this? Yes or no? You know, I need to know, you know, so I was really like, I can't wait no more, you know?
The number you dialed is not in service.
When just mentioning that delayed year, turning into a positive for you because that then gave you additional time to prepare physically, vocally, mentally, I even imagine. Now, obviously, you're Milo. You're not born Burton, nor with his voice. So my question is, how do you train yourself? What's the preparation and process getting yourself to that point? Becoming the frontman of Fear Factory and emulating what fans come to expect.
So the thing is, even though I've been singing for almost 15 years at that point, but still, you know, when you're a local player, like a local musician, you haven't experienced all the hardship of touring yet. And everybody is different, you know, every physic is different. So you don't know how your physic would react to touring. So I try to emulate some kind of touring stress on my body. So I would sing like 2 hours of Fear Factory songs every day. And not just singing, but I was in my old studio all alone, like an idiot, jumping and even like doing benters, you know, put your fucking hands up, you know, and stuff like that. So I would like emulate a tour. So every day I would sing a couple hours of Fear Factory songs for almost the whole year while doing some cardio, some jumping and headbanging and do what I do live.
You guys tired?
Doc, I'll get all the sleep I need when I'm dead.
On top of that, I was training in martial arts, which helped me a lot, not just in the cardio preparation, but also all the stretching routine, which is so important. I feel it's so important if you're an active performer. And it's not just good for martial arts, but also for sustaining a show, you know, with that kind of intensity and motion and dynamic. So yeah, that helped me a lot. And of course, vocally, like I always say, you know, my mom's a singing teacher, so I have a huge luck to have a singing teacher mom. I asked her to take care of me, you know, give me some lessons because I'm kind of self-taught as a singer, as a vocalist. I studied a lot in percussions, you know, I studied conservatory, did a lot of schools and stuff. But as far as being a vocalist goes, I was more like self-taught. I took tips from my mom every now and then, but then, you know, when I got the gift from Fear Factory, I was like, okay, I have to be as flawless as possible because I want to have a solid technique that is going to back up the strength of the touring. So yeah, we started taking lessons every 2 or 3 days a week. We still have lessons, you know, or like warming up routines and video calls. She always told me, you know, vocal cords are a muscle. So every muscle needs to be trained every day. From one hand, you don't want to overdo it because you don't want to put too much strain in your vocal cords when you're not touring. But at the same time, you don't want to completely stop because you have to do some kind of gym, some kind of workout to your vocal cords.
Definitely.
She helped me building an even more consistent vocal technique, of course, for clean vocals because she doesn't know much about screaming. But I think my screaming technique is sustainable for tours, you know, up until now. So there's no problem about it. I've been seeing mostly one guy, David Benides, which is an amazing screaming teacher from Boston. So I Skyped a couple lessons, mostly for pronunciation, to make sure the singing pronunciation was okay. He also, of course, you know, he checked on my technique also, and it was fine. Screaming technique was on check. So at that point, I was pretty much good to go. I was rehearsing the 2-hour set every day, and that's pretty much it.
I'm just picturing you in the studio performing your one-man concert to the world.
Yeah. Man, I look like an idiot.
It takes me back to being in my bedroom in high school, playing air guitar with the CD player, blaring Fear Factory or whatever band it was, leg up on the bed frame, pretending it was my stage box, singing and moshing all over the place. But then take that and replace it with the reality that this was all actually to front a band for real. Wait for it. And that band is Fear Factory.
Right. It's crazy because I've always been doing that in my bedroom, you know, just to emulate being in a live show, you know, because...
It's a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing. But that time I had to do it, like, for real, like for getting ready for war, you know? It felt like, what the fuck am I doing? You know, jumping like an idiot in my studio. But I think it's the way to go because, of course, you want to train for what you're supposed to do. You know, if you're supposed to scream and jump and headbang, this is what you got to train for.
Player one.
I love this quote from you.
This is a huge opportunity for me. I've been a fan of the band for many years and it feels very surreal, but I'm excited to be part of it. I know I have some massive shoes to fill, but I'm here to do it in the best way possible and give justice to the vocal legacy of this legendary band.
Leading up to this eventual first tour, as a fan of the band, was there a process for you mentally wrapping your head around the responsibility of stepping into these vocal shoes and fronting a band of such scale?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. The pressure was there, and I knew that this would have led to pressure, and it's obvious because it's such a huge band, a huge act worldwide, and like you said, huge shoes to fill. Of course, I knew that that was a huge responsibility. It still is a huge responsibility because what you would do is not just replacing the guy, which is a legend in metal, you know, but also carrying on the legacy, his vocal legacy, but the band legacy in general. It, of course, is a huge responsibility. But I would say it worked out pretty good, you know. Needless to say that before the very first show, I was tense, I was nervous. We didn't know what the outcome would have been. But fortunately, and I feel really blessed for that because you don't take it for granted, fans liked it, like this Italian freak. And
yes.
We were so happy that they were happy with it because we worked so hard and we still work so hard every day to make things as perfect as a human goes. But, you know.
And if someone gets upset, you say, chill out. Or you could do combinations.
Chill out, dickwad.
That's great. See, you're getting it.
No problemo.
But we're all perfectionists, you know. I'm a perfectionist. Dino, of course, a perfectionist. He always pushes everybody to do things better and better and better and buy new stuff, do new gear, you know. He wants the best. That's the mentality, you know, the Fear Factory camp. And I love it.
Idle hands are the devil's playground.
We were really thankful, you know, and feel blessed for the outcome of the fan base.
It was a massive moment in history, man. Your first live performance with Fear Factory, there were a lot of eyes on that, and it was great.
You could tell that people were craving for Fear Factory live, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Of course, a lot of people are going to be like, Bert is gone, what's the point, blah, blah, blah. But then, you know, you see the majority of people are like, fuck it, whatever's going to be, I want to see Fear Factory live. And I need Fear Factory live in my life. You know?
Yeah, man, that's it, eh?
And if Fear Factory Live is gonna sound good too, even better. You know? So
it's science.
What was involved in picking and choosing a set list for the debut tour? And were there any songs that were, I don't know, I guess you could say tried and tested, but then put aside because it just didn't quite fit with your vibe?
Dino always brings a set list. Sometimes he would ask me or P, you know, what you think about it, what you would add, you know, what you would take out. Of course, there are songs that he's going to be like, oh, we can't take out this song because it's classic, you know. So, of course, he knows because he's been playing that stuff for 30 years. So he knows what are the fans' favorite. I would say he does the majority of the job on the set list. And then we talk about it together. And so the set list for the Static X tour was a 10-song set list. We had the song Recode, which we rehearse every day. And then we play the first show. The very first song, and we haven't played it ever since because we felt that the crowd didn't react that well, you know, because they were like, oh yeah, that's cool, we want to hear the classics, you know. So from the second show on, we were like, okay, let's take out Rico and let's add Zero Signal, and people were like, you know, freaking out because, you know, it's a classic, it's a fan favorite.
Is mine. A fatality.
We were rehearsing those 10 songs, I think, plus 2 or 3 more that we thought we could have added, but we ended up just adding Zero Signal and swapping it with Rico. But I think we were rehearsing Lynchpin also, which we didn't play in that tour. But when we got off the Static X tour, we did our first headlining show at Whiskey here in LA, and then South American tour, which was a headlining tour. We had longer set. Of course, we started rehearsing more songs like Martyr and Scapegoat, Lynchpin. We even did Autonomous Combat System, which is the opening track for Genexus. I think it was a great opener. We played the Whiskey and we played 3 shows in South America and people loved it. We had to recharger, we had to do an Industrialist song.
So many songs spanning such a large, somewhat diverse back catalogue. Is there a particular album or era in that Fear Factory back catalogue that felt more daunting for you to approach?
The thing is, I love all Fear Factory songs. Sure, I have favorites, but I loved singing all of them. So when Dino is like, yo, let's do this song, I'm like, fuck yeah,
What about any challenging songs? Are there any that make you go, yeah, this is a hard one?
I'd say we already play hard songs, like vocally. I'd say challenging songs vocally. Like Resurrection and Lynchpin are pretty challenging because, they have that high G note that is really at the very end of a baritonal range. And, I do it, but it's not like you do it while drinking a soda and doing the sound bath. You have to be focused, and every time it's like, oh my God, I gotta do it right. I feel like I'm more consolidated right now, more than what I was last year, especially like songs like Lynchpin. I feel like, especially this last tour, I was singing it with a bit more, I would say confidence. Like, it doesn't bother me as much as it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it was bothering me, but it was like, it's so high, I was so nervous and wanted to get it right, I was so concerned about singing it right.
Yeah, you're more wearing it like your own skin now.
Yeah, it becomes some kind of muscle memory, I think. You sing it so much. We've been singing Lynchpin so much. Same thing with Resurrection. It becomes almost like, muscle memory. But I would say it's still challenging because, those are not just from a technical standpoint, but from an emotional standpoint, especially Resurrection. I think that when you sing it, you must pay attention not to flawless technique, but also to your emotional side. Like you have to put some soul to it. And I think that's what makes the difference when you perform it. I think, especially in Fear Factory vocal style, the soul aspect is really important.
Are there songs from Obsolete that you would love to perform that haven't been placed in any set list yet?
I would say all of them.
Yes, good answer.
But for sure, they are my favorites. Like, I can't wait to play live Timelessness.
Yeah.
I can't wait to play live Securitron. I actually love High Tech Hate.
Cowards to all.
Yeah. I think this is a great song. It's a great chorus. We have been playing Freedom or Fire, which I think it's a great live song. It's groovy, it's drum and bass groovy, and people love it.
Oh, that's one of my favorites. I love that song.
If new metal was a riff.
I think those B-sides, High Tech Hate, Securitron, we played Smash the Devourer just once at the Metal Injection Fest in Anaheim.
Cool.
That's a great song for live too, I can't wait to play the whole album.
Do it.
We've been talking about this Obsolete anniversary thing. I don't know if it's happening probably, I'm assuming next year. I don't know. It's still in the talk. But, you know, I'm still looking forward to it because it's really going to be awesome and sure people are going to love it.
Yeah, front to back, that would be something. And bringing Conception 5, the narrative itself, to life, playing out during the performance with visuals and cutscenes.
Right.
Action.
Anybody not wearing 2 million sunblock is gonna have a real bad day, get it? God, you think you're safe and alive? You're already dead, everybody. Him, you're dead already. This whole place, everything you see is gone. You're the one living in a fucking dream, Silverman, because I knew it happened. It happened.
Well, the production is another thing, you know, in the talking, because the more a band tours and the more funds, you know, to have more production, the hope is to have more and more production for the future, you know, not the crazy things, but, you know, gives a little bit of a twist. Maybe some giant Terminators.
Conception 5, the Obsolete Tour, directed by James Cameron.
Right? That would be dope, though. Have fucking giant ass Terminators on stage.
Order you not to go. I order you not to go. I order you not to go.
I know now why you cry. But it's something I can never do.
I have to say, I rewatched the music video for Resurrection again just recently. Still epic, by the way, and I believe within budget and reason, they took as much as they could from Conception 5 and crossed it over into that video.
I remember the first time I saw it was like, what the fuck is that? It had the Matrix kind of vibe, but it was so unique. It had that rebellious concept, you know, that sci-fi dystopian concept of the rebellious against the government, the machine, whatever, you know, it always fascinated me. The first Matrix. It's one of my favorite movies ever, you know? I always loved that concept, the sci-fi vibe.
After 9 years, you know what I realized? Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, I feel like if someone would put money on our desk, this is the money you fucking make a movie based on Obsolete, like with every song has its own video clip.
Dude, yes.
With scenes between songs, like a musical, pretty much. That would be fucking rad.
Oh man, that would be so amazing. Seriously, James Cameron, listen up. Okay,
Absolutely.
So everyone out there listening to this now needs to manifest that out there.
Right? You never know.
You never know.
Nothing is the way it's safe. It's only man and a machine. Dominate is to erase what the man of Earth made. Human ingenuity to eradicate humanity. Man is obsolete. Erased. Extinct.
What do you think you will bring to Fear Factory and this next chapter of the band?
What I wish, first of all, keep the legacy going. That's my first goal. I'm here to keep the legacy going and pay homage to the vocal sound, you know, in the band catalog. But as far as new music goes, and not just new music, but I would say in general, I want to bring energy. I want to bring some new sparkle of energy, you know, especially on stage. I mean, of course, every band, as a band ages, the energy is not as brutal as the early days, you know. So I'm assuming I say we because Pete is the new guy as well, the drummer, Pete Weber. We kind of brought some of that young energy, I think. Even though Dino and Tony didn't skip a bit, you know, they're like immortal. You know, the guys are, you know, they have more energy than me.
there can be only one.
That's pretty much what I can bring to the table, what I can offer to the Fear Factory camp. I don't want to change the band sound. I remember in an interview, Burton said, I think it's good to add elements to enhance the sound, but not to change. And I agree on that, because once you define your band sound, you don't really want to alienate your audience. That's the sound they're going for. That's what they're going to get from that brand. Even for new music, I think what I can bring, being myself a composer, both like soundtracks, classic music, but also in metal. And fortunately, I'm so thankful for the fact that Dino told me that I could bring my own ideas, for future new music.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty safe to say that that's what I can bring out to the table, like some ideas. It can be like a synth line, synth arrangement, some orchestral arrangement, vocal melodies, even riffs. It's like, if you have a riff, just throw it in there, we'll see. Which was a real thankful, because, of course, you wouldn't expect the riff master to give you such space. So I'm really thankful for that. I think we'll try new things, but still stay in the Fear Factory area, without straying away from it too much.
I get the feeling you seem quite grounded and have a pretty good balance between things, because you're extremely respectful, gracious, and humbled by the past and legacy of Fear Factory, and of course have a passion and zest for the future. What's it like for you with continual conversations and references to the past and legacy, the compare and contrast with Burton, even the good stuff? Say, if a fan compliments you in a way, saying something like,
"Wow, you're amazing, dude,"
and you sound just like Burton. Do you ever suffer a sense of imposter syndrome since stepping into this experience? And do you feel you have a healthy grip with honoring the past, but also allowing you to be your own person and voice within this band?
That's a good question. I think it comes pretty natural to me, because being in Fear Factory and representing Fear Factory, I don't really feel like it's something that is overshadowing my personality, because I always felt so connected to this band. I always felt like I was kind of part of this band, ironically,
It's like looking in a mirror, only not.
Because I knew all the shit going on, everything, So that was one of the things that Dino brought up when he was talking about the reason why he liked me and he wanted to hire me. You're not just cut up for the job, the vocal style is right. You're a composer, so you can add up things, but also so much stuff about the band that I don't even remember, like things that they said in that interview. That's how obsessed I've always been for Fear Factory. To me, it feels like full circle. I kind of feel, I don't know, that my personality has its own space. So it feels really natural. And I would say I never struggled in that sense, like you said. So.
Since joining Fear Factory, what would you say is the thing you've learned most about yourself, or grown from the most, personally or creatively?
First of all, I learned the tour life, which is definitely like a new chapter for sure. I traveled a lot, and that's pretty much a big background that I got from this experience. And also singing every night, it shapes your technique, your vocals even better. So when I went back after the first 2 tours last summer, I went back and I played a show with my other band. And the first rehearsal, they were like, holy shit, I can tell you toured. You know, like, what do you mean?
Damn, that's really awesome.
Yeah, I can tell, your vocals sound, I mean, not that you sounded like shit before, but it sounds like you're consolidated. It sounds like you toured. And I'm like, oh, cool.
See, Mr. Gibbs, most people never have to face the fact that at the right time and the right place, they're capable of anything.
How has Obsolete continued to inspire you over the years?
Well, it inspired a tattoo, first of all.
There you go.
So that counts as inspiration.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that counts.
Yeah, I think it constantly inspires me. Even all the music that I wrote in my other bands, it's constantly inspiring me every day. And all the music that I write or that I even think of, the lyrics, it was definitely totally inspiring for lyrics, I have an album with other bands and the lyrics are totally inspired by Obsolete,
right.
Specifically Obsolete. And I remember when I got the original CD, a friend of mine gave me for my birthday like years ago.
Now that's a great mate.
Right. And I read the storyline, the actual storyboard on the booklet. The first time I was standing in awe, it was like a cathartic experience because it makes you hear the record in a different perspective, It's like listening to the whole new record. It's like, holy shit.
It's no place to hide, plugged in your mind, conform design.
When you know the meanings of each song and what happens between songs, the character walks there and that happens,
Concede your right, concede your mind, surrender to authority. Concede your right, concede your mind, surrender to...
Not in my movie.
Almost a blind and almost at here. Future oppression becoming more clear. This is a warning, so you must take heed. This coming vision is reality.
It's been really nice to do this and get a little more insight into your story and you yourself. I could say it's still early days, but I also imagine it's felt like quite the journey from 2020 to here, right now. But the point I want to make is you still really seem like the kid in the candy store, if you know what I mean. You have the respect and admiration and also these big open eyes of wonder and excitement of all the possibilities for what the future may hold.
Right.
Yeah, it's quite humbling and inspiring to see because you've done quite a lot of amazing things already with Fear Factory, but yeah, kid in the candy store, man. I love it.
I think I will feel like that my entire life.
That's amazing.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that's a really great icebreaker when it comes to the fans, simply because you yourself are a fan, and that really comes through even during the live show.
The unknown future rolls toward us. I face it for the first time with a sense of hope. Because if a machine, a Terminator, can learn the value of human life, maybe we can too.
That resonates with the loyal fan base and I think goes a long, long way when it comes to your integration into the frontman shoes. They can look up to you as the frontman and also respect you because you are the real deal and you're a fan.
Right. And I mean, to me, fans are like me, I still am a fan, ironically, but I feel like we're all the same, basically. I don't feel like I'm up here, you know? I feel like I'm still a common mortal.
You're still one of us.
Right?
Sydney, it's been a fucking pleasure and an honor. And first time ever in Australia for me, and it's a fucking beautiful country, awesome people. Thank you guys very fucking much. This is our last song for tonight, and I want to dedicate this song to every single person here who's struggling with any kind of battles in their life, because no matter how far down you fall, music is always gonna pick you the fuck up. That's what I'm honored to do for you. Consumed with memories that proceeded to die, given the chance to bury, life was slipping away.
And I think one of the most important parts of success, that defines success, is not necessarily money or fame, but how people perceive you, the perception that people have for you. A lot of artists that I'm not even like a huge fan of, because not that I don't like them, but you know, just maybe not a super diehard fan, but I still love them because of their personality. I don't just want to be a great performer, a frontman or vocalist and do the best that I can with Fear Factory, but I want to also spread the message that the real success, it's being humble, being inspiring. That's really amazing, because you know, a lot of friends of mine, even friends that I haven't heard in years, they hit me up when the announcement was out, and they were like, I'm not just happy for you, but you're inspiring me to pursue my goals as well. You know, I was really happy for that, because I think that's the ultimate goal of an artist, to inspire people in their lives, you know? I mean, as I always say, it wasn't even a dream, it wasn't even in the plans to sing for Fear Factory.
Of course, I really wanted to say you're living proof that surreal, crazy dreams can come true.
I mean, to be honest with you, I never even thought about it. It's like, you tell me my favorite band is Metallica, I wish one day it can replace James Hetfield. I'm like, you know, come on, man. Yeah, you know, keep telling yourself that. I mean, it is. It's really crazy. I mean, they call it butterfly effect. Certain things work in a way that make other things work out. It's so crazy. You know, they've been through a lot of shit, which is sad. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm sorry that that happened to the guys, but at the same time, that didn't happen, I wouldn't be here. So it's crazy how life works sometimes.
Yeah, it really is, man.
I would say keep up with the hard work, you know, and keep working hard with what you want to do or pursue your goals. But sometimes trains just pass by, you know, and it's a huge moment of luck. But at the same time, you have to be prepared for it, because that only shot of your life, the train passes by, it's a luck, but at the same time you have to be prepared to jump on it. If you're not prepared to jump on it, you know, just miss it, and that's it.
So true. Another great recent example of this would have to be Eloy joining the ranks of Slipknot. A one-chance moment, once-in-a-lifetime jump onto that train, and to not look back.
And back then I didn't know if I was prepared for it. I was like, am I, you know, shitting my pants on stage in front of thousands of people? But I played in front of large crowds, but not touring, not like every night. And being somewhat famous, you know, well known, at least inside the metal community, I second guessed myself at first, but then you never know if you're ready until you try to jump on it. And then if it works out, then you're like, okay, I'm ready.
Full steam ahead.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Milo, thank you so much for your time and energy and joining the Life Is Peachy podcast.
Absolutely. You too. It's a pleasure, you know. I like to talk, you know, I'm a big talker, so.
I read in another interview not that long ago where you reflected on yourself, mentioning you can sometimes come across as shy or quiet, but if you're feeling comfortable, then you love to open up and talk. I'm just bringing this up because that's very similar to myself, I would say. Outside of this podcast, you often won't hear me saying a lot, which I don't know if that will surprise a lot of people or not. But if I'm feeling it, then I can talk to the cows come home, I guess. And normally I would say something like, oh, wow, I don't really usually talk this much, I swear. But ironically, it's following kind of catching myself talking endlessly to someone in that moment.
Right. Yeah, I'm listening. So
I appreciate you talking and all your stories and reflections. And
thank you, man.
Here's to an amazing new era of Fear Factory.
Thank you, man.
There we have it, episode 32 of the Life Is Peachy podcast, my chat with Milo Silvestro to the soundtrack of fan favorite Obsolete. Next up, the who, the what, the where and why is always revealed first up over at Patreon, where lit patrons find out early guest and album reveals exclusively. We can work it out. And on top of that, additional episode content is always waiting for you under the Michael Bolton tier at patreon.com/Life Is Peachy Podcast. A huge thank you to the Lip Virtual Tip Jar patrons and to Darren spinning the CD Discman and Fly of Change, Majika, Raymi, and Vaginator rocking that Michael Bolton tier. If you haven't already, follow the link in the episode's description and subscribe to my second podcast channel, The Mixtape Sessions, a more stripped-back Q&A driven podcast already featuring interviews with ex-Machine Head drummer Dave McLean and members from Crazy Town, Vision of Disorder, Head PE, Fly of Change, and Spine Shank. And if you're interested in what I do with Life Is Peachy Productions, music videos and music documentaries, head over to the Life Is Peachy Instagram to follow what I'm up to with both that side of things and, of course, the podcast. After recently settling back into Australia for the next little while, life has kept me pretty busy while still wanting to create quality episodes for you here. So please bear with me while I'm still working on my balance to manage everything going on, and I promise to continue bringing you new Lip episodes as often as I can, always with a special guest from the band or album of discussion.
Episode 33 is going to be epic.
Immersive audio documentary podcasts. Oh yeah.
And if someone comes up to you with an attitude, you say, eat me. And if you want to shine them on, it's hasta la vista, baby.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Why did I decide to commit to making them this way? Yeah, well, I just can't seem to do it any other way, so we're now in this together.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
Any support over at Patreon really makes a difference, so if you feel like swinging a few bucks each month to keep this freight train going, then I will forever be in your debt, with more episodes as payment.
You're out of your mind. Ain't it cool? I'm serious, Deke. Your mind is taking a walk off the map.
I want to once again wish everyone a continued and amazing 2024. Let's keep connecting over music and nostalgic moments. Until we hang out next, as always,
see you at the party, Richter.
Bye-bye.
You know, I can eat a peach for hours.
This episode was written, edited, and produced by myself, recorded from the comfort of my own home.
DIY style.
With each guest calling in from wherever they happen to be around the world at that particular time. The Life Is Peachy theme song is an original tune for this podcast written by Tim Richardson.
The Life Is Peachy Podcast is not monetized. All music rights and credits go to its rightful owners.
Further details can be found in this episode's description. All artwork is original and illustrated for the Life Is Peachy podcast by Chris Lisa Liefting.